Lee's mind. He wanted to run it by Dirk, though, before he said anything to anyone else. Finally, their shift was over, and Lee rode back to Dirk's house. They hadn't talked about what was happening, but as soon as Lee stepped into Dirk's living room, the man was all over him.
I kept thinking about you in that shower, getting all soapy, and kept trying to figure out how I could join you.
Dirk said as Lee's shirt was tugged over his head.
You are an amazingly sexy man.
Lee felt his belt being opened and the button on his jeans popping. Dirk's hand slipped under his boxers, gripping his shaft hard and strong. Lee grunted in Dirk's ear as a slow, firm stroke slid along his shaft, and Dirk swiped a thumb over the head of his cock. "You're gonna kill me," Lee groaned, and Dirk stroked again.
Want you naked?
Dirk growled as he shoved Lee's pants down his legs. "Here or bedroom?" Lee grunted as he tried to get out of his boots, before stepping out of the denim bunched around his ankles. Dirk nibbled hard on one of Lee's ears, making his cock throb in Dirk's hand.
I can fill you across the arm of the sofa or over the edge of the bed, but you have 2 minutes to decide, because I want you right fucking now.
Lee shook as he finally managed to get out of his pants, but with Dirk stroking him like he was, he couldn't move. As soon as Dirk released him, Lee raced for the stairs with Dirk right behind him. By the time he reached the bedroom, Dirk was already nearly naked as well, and Lee saw Dirk yank off his pants. Dirk threw them to the side, and Lee began to climb onto the bed. But Dirk had other ideas, and Lee found himself bent over the mattress.
That's it. Spread those huge legs.
Dirk crooned as he stroked his hands up Lee's thighs, sliding over his cheeks before spreading them wide.
That's what I want.
He ghosted a finger over Lee's opening, and Lee shivered with anticipatory delight. Dirk slid a hand behind his balls and then up under him. Lee lifted himself up, and Dirk stroked his cock once before pulling it back and pressing his butt down. Lee's cock pointed down, with the side of the bed rubbing against him. "Fuck, Dirk," Lee growled as he tried to move. He got friction, but not enough or the right kind.
No, fuck Lee, and I intend to do that soon enough,
Dirk told him, roaming his hands over Lee's skin. Lee sensed rather than felt Dirk kneeling behind him, hands stroking his ass, exposing him. When Dirk licked the underside of his cock up to his balls, Lee moaned softly, pressing back into the sensation for more. When Dirk kept going, Lee whined like a child, and as soon as Dirk's tongue reached his hole, Lee was breathless.
I love it when you sing for me.
Can't sing, Lee groaned as Dirk sucked one of his balls into his mouth.
Sure you can, Dirk told him. You just need the right incentive.
Dirk proceeded to provide that incentive, sucking and probing with his tongue until Lee couldn't see straight. And he sang, or at least made enough noises that by the time he felt Dirk stand behind him, Lee was nearly hoarse.
Don't move.
Lee heard Dirk move around behind him, and he kept his head on the bedding. He knew what Dirk was doing, but his entire body sang with want and desire. A snick sounded behind him, and then Dirk pressed a slick finger into him, going deep before bending slightly. Stars flashed behind his eyes as Dirk found his gland, and Lee nearly bucked off the bed.
Stay still,
Dirk chided softly, and Lee shook his head. Can't when you do that, Lee growled and pressed back, wanting to get Dirk deeper. Dirk pulled his finger away, and then Lee felt the pressure of Dirk pressing into his entrance. He braced himself as he was stretched, and Dirk entered him. The stretch nearly overwhelmed him, and he tried to catch his breath as Dirk slid deeper, filling him, connecting them together. Fuck, Dirk, Lee groaned loud and long as he sank deeper and deeper. When Lee felt Dirk's hips against his butt, he let out the breath he'd been holding, breathing hard to manage the sensations that washed over him. Having Dirk inside him was always like this, a rush of emotion as well as a feeling of fullness that sent him soaring. Dirk had an amazing talent for control. He moved when he wanted, and Lee could do nothing but wait until Dirk was ready. He could feel Dirk inside him, though, jumping and throbbing. Lee stretched out his hands, gripping the far side of the mattress. He felt Dirk lean over him, stretching over his back, kissing his shoulders and neck.
Love this. Being inside you is like coming home.
Lee turned his head and felt Dirk's lips suck at his neck. He wasn't sure what to say. Dirk usually wasn't one to talk like this during sex, and while he liked it, Lee just wasn't quite prepared for it. I love you too, Lee responded, and he felt Dirk's weight shift. Then, with near agonizing slowness, Dirk began to pull back, his cock jumping the entire time, pulsing against the spot that sent ripples throughout Lee's large body. Dirk didn't stop until he'd pulled out, and then he entered him again, driving deep as Lee groaned so hard and long, he gasped for air, with Dirk continuing his slow trek inside him. You're gonna drive me insane, Lee groused in a voice he knew Dirk would ignore. Dirk was going to drive him insane, in the best way possible. Move, damn it! Dirk snapped his hips, and then stopped, and Lee growled again.
You'll get the fucking of your life, but only when I'm damned good and ready.
Dirk nipped at his ear before snapping his hips lightly once again. Lee could feel his cock throbbing, and he moved his hips, trying to get a bit of friction against the bedding, but it didn't work. He could barely move with Dirk's weight on top of him. No, he was at Dirk's pleasurable mercy. Paybacks are a bitch, Lee threatened, but all Dirk did was chuckle.
Bring it on, big boy. I can take what you got to dish out.
Dirk pulled back once again, and Lee held his breath, only to have it whoosh out when Dirk drove back into him.
Can you take what I have for you?
Shit, yes, now fuck me! Lee nearly screamed. Dirk took him at his word and pulled out, driving into his body with enough force to shake him and make the bed jump slightly. Yes! Lee held on as Dirk went nearly wild. His entire body shook with Dirk's force. If he could just get a bit more friction, he'd be perfect, but Dirk managed to keep that from him. His moans turned to frustrated groans, and he tried his best to move in such a way as to get what he needed.
You're not coming until I'm ready, so just relax and put yourself in my hands,
Dirk told him, stroking his hands down Lee's back.
You're not going to be able to see or sit straight by the time I'm done.
Shit, Lee muttered as Dirk pegged his gland for like the millionth time, and he tightened his grip on the mattress as the last of his resistance and need for some sort of control fell away and he put himself fully into Dirk's care. That was when he began to really soar. Lee felt Dirk's hands on his side, driving them together as deeply as was humanly possible. It was also then that he realized he didn't need anything but his own desire and will.
That's it, big guy. Let it build,
Dirk said from behind him, but it sounded like his voice was coming from everywhere.
You can feel it starting in your balls and the base of your spine.
As soon as he heard the words, Lee could feel a tingle begin just where Dirk said, and as he continued talking, it built and built without any additional stimulation other than Dirk's voice in his ear. Jesus, Dirk, Lee cried as his climax built to the point where he had no control over his body, and he exploded as he felt Dirk sear his insides with his own release. The room echoed as their cries mingled and died away, leaving behind quiet. Lee held still, waiting for Dirk to move once again. He gasped when their bodies separated. Lee was a complete mess and unable to move. He heard Dirk walk out of the room and then return before he felt a towel cleaning him up.
Climb into bed,
Dirk whispered, and Lee made himself move. Dirk joined him, and Lee waited for Dirk to crawl next to him the way he usually did. Dirk wrapped his arms around Lee's chest. They didn't talk, and Lee closed his eyes, taking in the quiet that was broken only by the sound of their breathing and the soft beating of Dirk's heart when Lee rested his head against him. He'd once read that after making love, there was the time for two, when the rest of the world stopped and it was only them, quiet, peaceful, and alone with their hearts. Lee loved those times, and while they'd never talked about it, he was sure Dirk did as well.
I know you're worried about work,
Dirk said, breaking the silence. I am, and I have an idea to raise money. or at least make the chicken dinners bring in more money. But I'm wondering if it's too much or... Lee sighed and cut himself off as he felt Dirk shift on the bed.
Just tell me about it,
Dirk said. Well, for one thing, I think we need to offer the whole package and see if we can get people around town to donate things and help cook. I bet if we agreed to put up signs recognizing the people who donated, we could lower the food costs, which would make the money we do bring in go further. Lee explained as he bit his lower lip.
We've tried that in the past. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't,
Dirk explained.
Can't hurt to try. But I don't think that's your real idea.
No. My real idea is to do something to get more people to the dinner. Lee rolled over to face Dirk. I noticed that most of the people who stopped by to pick up the chicken were men, and I thought we could change that. Lee could feel his excitement growing.
How?
Dirk sounded tentative and a bit suspicious. I was thinking we could hold a sort of chicken and beef cake dinner, Lee said. We could do the chicken dinner the regular way, but add a sit-down dinner at one of the local halls. The guys would serve the dinner, and I was thinking we could wear our boots and fire pants.
We usually serve in our gear, or at least some of us do,
Dirk replied. No, I mean the only thing we'd be wearing is our boots and fire pants. Maybe our hats, too. Most of the guys of the station are in shape and work out. If we made it sort of a ladies' night, I bet we could sell a lot of tickets. The more Lee thought about it, the more excited he got, and Lee realized he was beginning to talk faster. I bet we could even set up an area where the ladies could have their picture taken with a firefighter for $10 or something. It would be great, and I bet it would bring in a lot of money for the station. Lee stopped talking and waited. The idea had been running around in the back of his head for a bit, but he didn't realize how much he'd thought about it until he began talking about it with Dirk. He waited a few seconds for Dirk to say something, but he was quiet. What do you think?
Are you nuts?
Dirk asked, and at first Lee thought he was kidding.
We could never do that. The borough wouldn't allow it, and the guys would never go for it. Besides, most of the people who support us are older couples. How do you think they'll react to this?
Lee was surprised at how hurt he felt that Dirk didn't like his idea. If we expect to raise enough money, then we need to get other people to support us. Has anyone ever brought it up or asked anyone? Lee pressed defensively.
No, because it just couldn't be done. We're a fire company, not a Chippendales review.
Dirk snapped sharply. It wouldn't be like that. I'm not suggesting we become strippers or anything, but it would get the ladies in for a nice meal with some scenery. Lee pulled away from Dirk's arms. You don't have to like my idea, but you don't have to be bitchy about it either, Lee continued, moving away.